What's up, everybody? Hello and welcome to Not Your Average Meta, an MTG Commander channel dedicated to bringing you decks and commanders you wouldn't normally find in your average meta. This week on Not Your Average Meta, we have another fun game we recorded with my friends up north in Roselle. First up, we have Eddie playing Radha, Heart of Keld. This deck looks to dump out as many lanes as possible in order to pump up Radha and take out his opponents with commander damage. Next, we have Chris returning with Safi's Gruul brother Hans Eriksson. This deck looks to use Hans' ability to cheat out big creatures from the top of his library in order to overrun his opponents for a win. Then we have Justin playing his post-Golos banned 5-color deck Jodah Archmage Eternal. This is the same Myojin tribal deck, but now he's looking to use Jodah's ability to cheat in all his high CMC Myojin and other Kamigawa creatures. Lastly, we have Fallgral playing his Temur partner pairing of Gilanra Call of Wildwood and Ludevic Necro-Alchemist. This deck is a deck that looks to accumulate as many energy counters as possible and maybe turn them into some kind of value in order to win the game. Now that we have our fighters, let's step into the Thunderdome and see which deck will come out on top. Turn 1, Eddie plays a Forest and drops in a devastating Turn 1 Skyshroud Ranger. Chris thinks about scooping, then decides to play a tapped Temple of Abandon instead, scrying 1. Justin draws and takes 2 for an untapped breeding pool, then pays 1 for a Wild Growth, attaching it to the breeding pool. Fog draws and plays a Misty Rainforest for turn. He then takes 1 to crack it and go get a Katria Triumph and passes. Eddie plays a Mountain for turn, then uses his Ranger to put another Forest into play. He then taps 3 to cast Cultivate, putting another land into play and putting 1 into his hand. Chris draws for turn and plays Yavimaya, Cradle of Growth, giving everyone the gift of Forest before casting 3 visits to go get a tapped Stomping Grounds. Justin draws, then plays a Fabled Passage before cracking it to go get a land. He then shortcuts before tutoring to play a Soul Ring. Fog plays an Island for turn, then taps 2 for a Sage of Chalet's Claim, getting 3 energy counters and passes. Eddie untaps his 4 lands to start turn 3 and plays another Forest. He then taps 3 to cast his Commander Radha before using his Ranger to drop in another Mountain. He then taps 2 for Tormenting Voice, discarding a Forest, and draws 2 cards. Chris plays an untapped Rootbound Crag for turn, that taps 4 for Defense of the Heart. Justin draws and then takes 2 damage to just play an untapped Overgrown Tomb. Fog plays a Mountain for turn, that taps 1 for an Altered Expedition map, then pays 2 to crack it and go get a land, putting it to hand. Eddie draws for turn and plays another Forest, then taps his Ranger to drop in a Myriad Landscape. He then goes to combat swinging Radha at Justin. After no blocks are declared, he uses Radha ability to pump her up +8/+8, dealing 11 commander damage to Justin. Chris plays a Forest for turn. He then pays 4 to cast his commander Hans Eriksson and passes. Justin untaps and plays his custom altered Temple Garden, taking 2 more life. He then taps 4 to cast his commander Jodah. Fog plays an Aether Hub for turn and gets another energy counter. He then taps 4 and casts Panharmonicon. Eddie draws for turn and goes to combat, swinging his commander Fog, who blocks with the Sage. With nothing else, Eddie passes. Chris draws and plays another Mountain. Chris then goes to combat and swings Hans at Eddie. On attack, Chris reveals a Dolmen's Gate off the top of his library, and Eddie declares no blocks, taking 1 damage. Chris then plays Dolmen's Gate, and an Eternal Witness, getting his 3 visits back to his hand. Justin draws and takes 2 to play an untapped Godless Shrine, before tapping 4 for a Leyline of Sanctity. At the end of his turn, Eddie casts Unravel the Aether on Fog's Panharmonicon, shuffling it back into his library. Fog then draws for turn and taps 3 to cast his commander Ludevic, before passing his turn. Eddie starts his turn and goes straight to combat, attacking Chris with Radha. Chris then blocks with his Eternal Witness. Eddie then casts Thrill of Possibility, discarding a Forest, and draws 2 cards. He then casts Druidic Satchel and a Deglamor, targeting Chris's Defense of the Heart, which he then shuffles into his library. Eddie then uses his Ranger to drop in another Forest and passes. Chris casts Kadama's Reach and goes to get a Mountain and another land to hand. Kristen swings Hans at Eddie and reveals a Darksteel Colossus off the top of his library. With Hans' fight trigger on the stack, Chris then casts Run Wild and taps 1 to regenerate Hans. Eddie then takes 11 damage and then Chris draws off the Ludevic trigger. Justin draws for turn and plays a Swamp before passing. Fog draws for turn to cast his other commander, Gilanra, Caller of Wildwood. He then swings Ludevic at Eddie for 1. Fog then goes to his end step and draws off the Ludevic trigger, then discards down to hand size. Eddie plays a Terramorphic Expanse for turn to cast Hot Soup. He then equips Hot Soup to his commander and uses his ranger to drop in a forest. He then swings his unblockable commander Chris before pumping Radha up with her own ability. Chris can't block and he takes 14 commander damage. Eddie then draws off the Ludevic trigger. Chris draws for turn and then casts Xanagos and goes to combat. Chris then targets the Colossus with the Xanagos trigger and swings the crew at Eddie. He then reveals Kodama of the East Tree off the top of his library, which then fights Hans, killing him. Eddie then still takes enough damage to get taken out of the game. Chris then casts Druid of Purification, and each of us decides to pick Justin's Leyline to destroy it. Chris then draws off the Ludevic trigger and passes. Justin draws and plays a forest before casting Ravnica War to exile all the multicolored permanents from play. He then casts Salundi Vision, looking at his top 6 and revealing a Brainstorm. Fog draws for turn, then taps out to cast Confiscation Coup, getting 4 more energy counters, then paying 6 to seal Chris's Kodama. Chris taps for turn, then plays a Mana Crypt before casting Morag. He then swings everybody to Justin, taking him down to 8 life. Chris plays the Command Tower, giving him an extra combat step. He then swings the Colossus at Justin, taking him out of the game, and the Druided Fog, taking him down to 36 life. He then casts Dahmer's Ambush, putting a counter on his Colossus and making him fight Fog's other commander, Gilanra, killing him. Fog draws for turn and then plays a Scalding Tarn, before paying 1 life to crack it and going to get a basic force out of his library. He then casts Thopter Spy Network and a Whirl of Virtuoso, getting 3 more energy. He then pays 3 energy to create Thopter and passes. Chris wins his Mana Crypt roll before tapping out to cast Finale of Devastation and goes to find a Stonehoof Chieftain in his library. He then goes to combat and runs Hulkamania Wild all over Fog's Thopter for the win. This week's big winner was Chris, picking up his first win on the channel, piloting his Hans Eriksson deck. I remember seeing Hans when he was spoiled and thinking about how he had the potential to be a really fun commander to play, so I'm glad I got to see his ability used to its full potential while getting a win. The MVP of today's game was a coin flip between Hans and Morag, but in the end I had to go with Morag because even though the game was pretty much already over, Morag giving Chris those extra combat steps really put the nail in the coffin. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you can see more games and decks you wouldn't normally see in your average meta.